The sun hung high in the sky over the vast Texan plains, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain. Dust swirled in small clouds as the wind whispered through the tall grasses. It was a hot noon, and the heat shimmered on the horizon like a mirage, making everything seem dreamlike. In this tough land, life was often hard for those who worked with cattle. Vaqueros, the skilled horsemen of the West, roamed these fields with pride and purpose. They were known for their bravery and their ability to handle even the wildest of cattle. However, danger lurked around every corner. Lawlessness sometimes reigned as rival groups fought for land and resources. As the sun beat down relentlessly, a sense of urgency filled the air. Somewhere in this sprawling wilderness, a vaquero found himself shackled and alone, caught by men who saw him as nothing more than a prize to be claimed. His fate hung in the balance, and hope seemed distant. Yet not far away, a border ranger rode with purpose. The ranger was strong and resolute, well aware of the risks that lay ahead. He could hear murmurs of trouble as he approached, knowing full well that saving the shackled vaquero would require courage beyond measure. The cries of men echoed in his mind as he prepared himself for what lay ahead, a clash that would test his resolve and honor under the blazing Texan sun. The shackled vaquero sat against a rough wooden post, the sun blaring down on him as sweat dripped from his brow. His hands were bound tightly with coarse rope, cutting into his skin and reminding him of his helplessness. With every passing moment, he felt a growing sense of dread. He could hear the distant sounds of men shouting and riding, each echo sharpening his fear and uncertainty. Once proud and free, he had been a skilled horseman who roamed the plains with confidence. His dark hair tousled with the wind as he skillfully maneuvered through cattle herds. But now, stripped of his freedom, he contemplated what had gone wrong. The men who captured him had spoken harshly, claiming he deserved punishment, turning his world upside down. As shadows danced around him in the hot sun, memories of laughter and camaraderie among fellow vaqueros flooded his mind. Those courageous souls he longed to see again. Just then, a low murmur reached his ears, something he couldn't quite make out above the noise of the day. Was it friends coming to save him? Or was it just an illusion created by fear? Suddenly, a loud shout broke through the chaos, voices spurred onward by anger and purpose. The vaquero realized that time was slipping away like grains of sand through his fingers. If help did not arrive soon, escaping this dire situation might be impossible. Desperation filled his heart as he strained to hear anything that might bring hope. The thundering hooves of the border ranger's horse echoed through the dusty plains, a sound that carried hope and determination. As he approached the scene, the ranger's keen eyes scanned the horizon for any sign of trouble. Dressed in his weathered leather gear, he embodied strength and resolve. This was not just another day in the field. It was a mission to save a life. With each stride, he felt the urgency of the situation intensify. The ranger had heard whispers about a vaquero held captive, and he knew he couldn't ignore the call for help. His heart raced as he imagined the shackled man, alone and frightened, longing for freedom. He urged his horse forward, pushing it to its limits as the heat shimmered around them. As he drew closer, the sounds of shouting men reached his ears. The Texas Rangers were nearby, their voices filled with aggression, demanding justice, or so they thought. But their shouts only fueled the ranger's determination. He was not here to uphold their version of justice. He was here to rescue the vaquero and bring him back to safety. The border ranger spurred his horse into a gallop, adrenaline surging through his veins. He could see the figure of the shackled vaquero against the wooden post, and in that moment, everything became clear. He would not let another soul suffer at the hands of those who misunderstood true honor. With courage blazing in his heart, he prepared himself for whatever confrontation lay ahead, knowing that today would define them both. As the border ranger galloped closer, the air crackled with tension. The shouting of the Texas Rangers grew louder, their voices sharp and filled with anger. They stood in a circle around the shackled vaquero, hands resting on their holstered guns, ready to draw at a moment's notice. The ranger could see their faces twisted with determination, believing they were enforcing the law, but he knew their actions could lead to bloodshed. "Let him go!" the ranger shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. The words hung in the air, drawing attention. The Texas Rangers turned, their eyes narrowing as they sized up the newcomer. A few exchanged glances, signaling that they were not about to back down. "You think you can just ride in here and play hero?" one ranger sneered, stepping forward. "That vaquero's nothing but trouble. He deserves what he gets." The tension escalated as both sides squared off. The shackled vaquero watched in fear and hope, feeling the weight of their confrontation pressing down on him. The border ranger felt his heart race as he prepared for what might come next. He knew words alone would not resolve this standoff. Action was necessary. With a swift motion, he drew his weapon, aiming it toward the ground but ready to defend himself if needed. "I won't let you harm him any further," he declared firmly, standing tall against the encroaching threat. The stakes were high, and he sensed that this conflict could change everything in an instant. The air buzzed with intensity as the standoff continued, both sides unwilling to back down. The sun bore down hard, making the tension even more unbearable. Shouts filled the air, each voice clamoring for justice but echoing their own ideas of what that meant. "Release him!" the border ranger barked again, his voice firm and unwavering. He could hear the Texas Rangers responding in kind, their shouts piercing through the heat. "He deserves punishment. Justice needs to be served," they bellowed, convinced that their actions would uphold the law, even if it meant inflicting harm. The shackled vaquero felt a mix of fear and hope. He didn't know if this conflict would end with his freedom or his destruction. His heart raced as he watched the border ranger stand tall, unwavering even against a throng of determined men. It was clear that if a compromise was to be found, it would come only through bravery and resolve. Suddenly, one of the Texas Rangers drew his weapon, a glint of steel catching the sunlight as he aimed it at the border ranger. Panic surged through the vaquero's chest. This could explode into violence at any moment. "Stand down!" he heard another ranger shout at his comrade, but the tension was electric. With fists clenched and minds racing, all eyes were locked onto the unfolding scene, knowing that each shout echoed not just for justice but for survival itself. The battle lines had been drawn, and neither side would yield without a fight. In the midst of the charged standoff, silence fell momentarily, broken only by the sound of nervous breaths and the distant rustle of the wind. The border ranger stood resolute, eyes locked on the Texas Rangers with unwavering determination. He knew that this moment could decide everything, not just for himself or the vaquero but for anyone who dared to tread the thin line between right and wrong in these unforgiving lands. Sweat dripped down his brow as he felt the weight of his weapon in hand, steady yet ready to protect. Just then, another Texas Ranger shouted, "You're outnumbered, Ranger. Back down now." Their resolve was palpable, but so was the Ranger's. He took a deep breath and shouted back, "Justice isn't determined by numbers. It's about what's right." The moment hung in the air like a tightrope stretched over darkness. Tensions flared again as a fellow Ranger stepped closer to draw his gun fully, rage fueling his actions. Without hesitation, the border ranger raised his weapon higher. "I won't let you harm him," he commanded, his voice ringing with authority. Before anyone could react further, the sound of gunfire erupted, a chaotic thunderclap tearing through the stillness of the blazing afternoon. Dust exploded around them as shots rang out in rapid succession, signaling that neither side would relent easily. The showdown had begun, each man knowing that it might end in blood but driven by their belief in justice or vengeance. On this fateful day in Texas, the chaotic sounds of gunfire filled the air as dust swirled around the combatants. But amidst the turmoil, the border ranger focused on his mission, rescuing the shackled vaquero. With bullets flying, he didn't hesitate. He dashed toward the captive, moving swiftly through the chaos. The ranger's heart raced, knowing that every second counted. The shackled man's fate depended on his courage. As he reached the vaquero, he could see fear etched on his face, but also a flicker of hope. "Hold on," he shouted over the din, quickly kneeling beside him. With skillful hands, He began to untie the rope binding the vaquero's wrists. The ropes felt rough against his own fingers, but time was of the essence. Every passing moment heightened the danger surrounding them. Just then, another Texas Ranger spotted him and aimed his weapon. "Stop right there," he yelled. But the border ranger was already in motion. He turned to shield the vaquero with his own body, ready to face whatever might come next. With a final tug, the ropes fell away and the vaquero was free. Relief washed over him like a cool breeze on a hot day. "Thank you," he whispered with gratitude as he rubbed his sore wrists. But there was no time to celebrate. They had to move fast. "Let's go," commanded the border ranger as they both sprang into action, dodging bullets and racing for safety across the dusty plains. Together they made their escape, knowing that though they had survived this battle, their fight for freedom was far from over. As the dust settled and the echoes of gunfire faded into silence, the border ranger and the freed vaquero found themselves panting and shaken, yet alive. They took refuge behind a cluster of rocks, their hearts still racing from the adrenaline of their escape. The vast Texan plains stretched out before them, both beautiful and treacherous, a stark reminder of what they had just endured. "Are you all right?" the ranger asked, glancing at the vaquero to assess his condition. Despite his ordeal, the vaquero stood tall and proud, his spirit unbroken. "Thanks to you," he replied with a grateful nod. The weight of his shackles was replaced by a newfound sense of freedom and purpose. However, the danger wasn't entirely behind them. The noise from the confrontation could easily attract more Texas Rangers, who would not take kindly to their escape. "We need to move quickly," said the ranger, scanning their surroundings for any signs of pursuit. The freedom they had fought so hard for felt fragile. Resolute, they set off across the plain, sticking to the shadows of rocky outcrops and tall grass. With each step, they became more determined to reach safety. Together they forged an unspoken bond born from shared struggle and survival. As they fled into the unknown, both men understood that their fight wasn't just for one day. It was for a future where all men could walk free without fear. Hope surged within them as they pressed on, united by courage on this uncharted journey ahead. As the border ranger and the vaquero navigated the Texan plains, their journey became a powerful testament to themes of honor and courage. The border ranger had risked everything to confront the Texas Rangers, not just for the sake of one man's freedom, but to uphold a deeper sense of justice that transcended laws dictated by authority. His bravery shone brightly as he faced armed opponents, embodying the conviction that standing up for what is right often requires tremendous personal sacrifice. For the vaquero, his newfound freedom ignited a strong desire to reclaim his dignity and place among his fellow men. Having been shackled, he understood that true strength lies in resilience and unity within brotherhood. Their bond was forged not only through shared danger but also through mutual respect. He recognized the ranger's act of valor as an embodiment of honor, a reminder that heroism often resides in those willing to stand up against oppression. As they crossed the vast landscapes dotted with dusty hills and wide-open skies, both men were driven by a common goal: to create a world where honor prevails over fear and courage triumphs over injustice. Each step they took was empowered by hope, knowing that their fight was more than just survival. It was about paving a path for others who might also be trapped in chains, physical or otherwise. In this unforgiving land where darkness often loomed large, they vowed to carry forth the light of honor and courage in every stride, ready to face whatever new challenges lay ahead on their journey toward liberation. As the sun began to set over the vast Texan plains, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the border ranger and the vaquero found themselves at a crossroads. Their harrowing journey had transformed them, forging an unbreakable bond through shared peril and unwavering determination. They had faced down danger together, embodying the very essence of honor and courage against overwhelming odds. Now, with freedom within their grasp, they understood that their fight was far from over. The shadows of oppression still lingered in the land, but they felt empowered to confront it. Each step forward symbolized not just a move toward safety but a commitment to stand against injustice wherever it might arise. The ranger knew that he couldn't simply ride off into the sunset after this victory. He had become a beacon of hope for those who felt trapped by fear. And for the vaquero, his newfound freedom would inspire others to reclaim their own dignity and rights. They talked about what lay ahead, a world where men like him could live without shackles, where justice ruled instead of lawlessness. As they ventured deeper into the unknown, both men held onto the lessons learned through their trials. That true strength comes from standing up for one another, and that even in the darkest times, courage can light the way. With their hearts full of hope and their spirits unbroken, they rode into a future that promised both challenges and triumphs, knowing they would face whatever came next together.